morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that we have decided to talk about. And the title of tonight's show is Candidate for Clackamas County Commissioner, position number 4. My guest is Ken Humberston. Ken Humberston. And I butchered that before he got here and corrected it so the graphics would be correct. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Don. I appreciate the opportunity.
How are you feeling right now?
Fine, fine.
You look fine. Why is it I'm nervous and you're not?
I don't know.
It's the Marine Corps, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. The Marine Corps helps, that's for sure.
So as you know, the show goes in 2 major segments. The first segment is what I call the bio segment, where I talk to you about who you are personally. So the viewers get an idea about what kind of person you are, short of politics or all that kind of stuff. Okay. And then the second half, we're going to talk about your candidacy and the reasons you're running and all kind of questions related to that. That's in the second half of the show. But the first half may be longer or shorter, depending on how things go as we go along. Okay. And if I ask you a question along the way and you don't want to answer, or you get mad at me, yell at me, and we'll continue going. But occasionally I'll make a mistake and ask a question that doesn't fit so well. So don't go there. Okay. And I have a record of maybe having in 16 years one guest who was quite unhappy because no matter what I said, she didn't like me. But that's a good record.
That's a pretty good record, I would say. Yeah.
So when you leave here, you have had a good time, I'm pretty sure.
Well, let's hope so.
All right, let's see. We're going to start off with, if I were to ask your best friend, who is Ken, what would your best friend say? Be your best friend.
That's an interesting question.
Ken is what?
I think my best friend would say that I'm the kind of guy that you can trust, that he keeps his word, that I'm a hard worker, that I'm pretty loyal, very loyal to my friends, and I try to the best of my ability to do what's right. So I think that's probably how I'd be defined. I hope.
Would your best friend use those words that you used? You were speaking about
it's hard to say. Person. It's hard to say.
All right.
But I think that would be the qualities that they would talk about.
Okay. Yeah. You're pretty smart, pretty sharp, pretty good thinker.
Well, I work at it. I think that's the important thing. We don't all get it all right all the time, but you have to work at it. So
how did you get to be the way that you are today? You're articulate, you're bright, you're impressive, and you're intense, and those are my impressions of you so far. How did you get to be that way?
Well, kind of a diverse background, I guess you would say.
Sure.
As you've alluded to already, I was in the Marine Corps.
How long were you in?
About 2 years, back in 1965. But for some period of time, I part-time grew up in the carnival business as a kid.
Carnival business?
So I was doing carnival barking when I was 9 years old. So that was a great experience, a lot of fun growing up as a kid that way. But over time, after the Marine Corps, I worked at Naval Air Station North Island for a while as an aircraft electrician, and then I went into law enforcement for my career.
Well, let's back up and follow my script a little closer here.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had a script.
I'm reading it, yeah. And when and where were you born?
I was born in Long Beach, California, 1946.
46. Why were you born?
Ask my father and mother that question.
See, you never put on a spot. Anything significant about your national or cultural heritage that's worth mentioning to the viewers?
No, I'd just say, all American.
Okay.
So.
And religious preference, or no comment, or none?
Well, it's a subject I don't think belongs in politics, so I tend to adhere to the Constitution on that one, where it says there shall be no religious test for public office. I would hope that people judge me on the quality of my character.
You bet.
As Martin Luther King once said, and on the jobs that I have done in the past and hope to do in the future, and leave it at that.
You're going to be a good commissioner, I can tell. What are your chances of winning? What are you going to say? Poor?
No, we think they're pretty good. When we started out, maybe not so much, but we've worked really hard over the last 16 months in this campaign, and I think we have a very good chance of winning this.
Mm-hmm. And your formal education? How
Bachelor's
much of that
degree.
did you
I
get?
have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice administration from San Diego State University.
Why did you choose that as a major?
Well, interestingly enough, it wasn't my original major. My original major was political science and philosophy. They're still passions of mine. But I went into law enforcement for a career, and it made sense to me to get a degree in the career in which I was working.
Sure.
So that's what I did.
Mm-hmm. And what did your mom and dad do?
Well, my father was in the Marine Corps during World War II and in Korea. And he was a ship fitter for a while, and then he ran an apprentice program at Naval Air Station North Island. In 32nd Street, I'm sorry, at 32nd Street in San Diego. My mother had been a legal secretary before she married him. But then she pretty much stayed at home. In their later years, they owned an antique business. So I also learned not only the carnival business, but I learned a little bit about the antique business and learned how to do auctioneering because my father did auctioneering and I learned the business from him.
Did you learn a lot from your dad?
A lot, yes. He taught me some good lessons.
Okay. Any other education worth mentioning now besides your formal education in college?
Just a broad base of experience in a wide variety of government service areas, from boardsmanship in a wide variety of areas to my actual professions. So.
And what do you do now besides run for public office? You still working?
Yes and no. I retired 20 years ago, but when I retired I got a teaching credential and a real estate license, and so when we relocated to a small town I began selling real estate and substitute teaching in the local school district and served on the city council and as mayor in the town. So generally speaking, I just do things that are public service kinds of related. I currently serve on the Clackamas River Water Board here in Clackamas County. Was one of the people they appointed to help straighten out the problems that the district had at one point in time. And of course, I have the opportunity to see my grandchildren locally on occasion. And
grandchildren? You look too young.
We have 4.
4?
Yeah.
Yep, we have brothers and sisters.
I have a younger brother down in Eugene, Oregon. And that's it.
Okay.
So.
And who was your parents' favorite, you or your younger brother?
I would say they was probably my younger brother and that I'm the black sheep, but he would argue the other way, so who knows?
You never know what you're going to get from me by way of questions.
No, that was a surprise question,
of
quite
course,
frankly.
that's the idea. Catch you off guard.
But
so people see who you really are when you're off guard. Yeah.
I suspect that if they had a favorite, they would never admit it.
Of course not. And you have a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend besides your wife who I met?
No, I have a wife. And we've been married 47 years.
47 years?
Yes. And we have 2 children and 4 grandchildren.
Does your wife love you?
I certainly hope so. She stayed with me. And I'm not rich, so I figure she loves me.
All right. And how would you characterize your position on a continuum, left or right, or centrist or what, overall?
Overall, I consider myself a progressive on most issues. With maybe one exception, and that is that as someone who's worked in public service for my entire career, both on boards where we had the administrative responsibilities, as well as an employee in law enforcement for my career, I believe in being very, very careful with the taxpayer's dollar. I do believe the government has a role to play in making our lives better, but if you expect the public to support you in those endeavors, you have to be able to demonstrate that you're not wasting the taxpayer's dollar.
Okay.
So I'm pretty tight when it comes to the fiscal issues. I want to be sure that any agency I'm a member of a board of is being careful with the dollar. I don't expect government to run like a business, because it's not a business. Its function is different. It has to be equitable and fair to all and cannot discriminate. And its business is not to make a profit, it's to provide services. But that doesn't mean that you should waste the money. It should be done as efficiently as reasonably possible.
You sound a bit progressive there, I think. And
well, you know,
I'm a progressive, of course.
Yeah. If you want to do a program to help senior citizens, if I use that as an example,
sure.
And you are over here wasting a ton of money, but then you go to the general public and say, we want to raise your taxes because we want to do this program over here, it's a fair question when I say, well, why are you wasting money over here? Okay? If you can show that you are using your money responsibly, or their money responsibly, then when you go to the public and say, this is what we want to do and what's needed, you get a better reception. So to me, it's being fiscally responsible. It's not being a tax and spend liberal, and it's not being a tax cutting conservative. It's being responsible with the budget and with the monies that the citizenry has allocated to you through their taxes.
You think there's a fair number of politicians who do not think that way? They're concerned about other motivations in their behavior in their political office, like making money or whatever else comes to mind.
You know, politics is like any other human endeavor. You have good people in the business, and you have bad people in the business, and you have people that kind of waver back and forth. And so, you know, I hesitate to ascribe motives to anybody as a group. I tend to deal with people as individuals across the table. What they demonstrate across the table is how I'll deal with them.
Maybe looking at some people from the past, historically, so to speak, how I would say certain people who had positions of power in America, generally they were social justice primarily, and others are more interested in profit and business rather than person to person.
There's some truth to that, yeah.
Yeah. And who are some heroes from the past that you look up to? Not just in politics, but generally human beings that you've heard about.
Probably one of the greats of the 20th century that not a lot of people pay much attention to is a gentleman named Albert Schweitzer, whose core philosophy was reverence for life. He wrote a wonderful book called Out of My Life and Thought. He was an expert on classical music. He was a philosopher. He was a doctor and ran a hospital in Lambarene, Africa.
Yes. Brilliant
man. I would say of people who were never in politics, that would be a man that I had a great deal of respect for. I think he did wonderful things for us.
Yes.
In politics, you know, the inspiration of John Kennedy sticks with me. As I told you earlier, I had John Kennedy bumper stickers on my bicycle when I was 14 years old. So that was an inspirational man for me. In terms of getting something done that benefited people, even though the war unfortunately tarnished his reputation, Lyndon Johnson did a lot for people.
Yeah.
And he got a lot of what Kennedy wanted to get done through, that in honor, I would say, of the president, quite frankly. So I admired him for what he accomplished for so many people. That's a couple people.
That's good enough.
So.
Yeah. What do you think about the New Deal?
Well,
FDR.
FDR. I wish we had used some of the New Deal approaches to the problems that we faced over the last 8 years, quite frankly. It would have been, I mean, it demonstrated clearly that when you invest in infrastructure, you can pull us out of recessions and depressions,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the benefit of that infrastructure being there for the next 2 and 3 and 4 generations, which increases productivity, makes opportunity both for workers as well as for business. I really think that we missed a great opportunity not being able to do that during the last 6 or 7 years. And especially when you consider how low the interest rates were.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have to borrow money to do this kind of thing, what better than borrowing it at 1% or less? It would have been an ideal time, frankly. So New Deal programs for building roads and sewer and water and parks and other infrastructure that we need, maybe moving us more and more towards renewable energy, would have been a great opportunity.
And we could do similar things today.
We still could do it today.
What's stopping us?
Political gridlock in Washington, D.C.
Why is that?
I think the parties have basically backed off into their respective ideological corners of purity, and they're not doing what they need to do, which is to sit down across the table and negotiate solutions.
Is it time for another political party?
That's hard to say.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
The two parties that we have are pretty well entrenched in our way of life, in our politics, in our thinking. And traditionally what usually happens is the minority parties have very good issues that have been ignored, oftentimes by the major parties. But when they have traction with the public, then the major parties grab them. And they do implement them. And they usually have a large enough constituency to get that done. That's the plus, I suppose, of the two-party system. The negative is what's going on right now. Ideological purity gets in the way of pragmatic problem solving.
He might as well put it out front here so that we're pretty clear, because you can sense my bias as I listen to you. I'm a progressive, populist kind of a person. Jim Hightower is a hero of mine.
I like Jim. Yeah, I've read some of his material.
He's delightful. I take his monthly newsletter, and the stuff he writes about, and his way of talking about things is just so down to earth and grounded. Yeah. I got a difficult question, and I asked only a few guests, but I want to try it on you.
Okay.
Difference between sympathy and empathy and compassion, those three things. What's the difference between them?
Sympathy is essentially, feeling sorry for the condition that you see another person in, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Compassion is recognizing that condition and being willing to do something about it, in my mind.
Yes.
Not just point the finger and say, gee, I feel sorry. And empathy is understanding that could be you, that could be something, as the old Native American expression goes, walk a mile in the other man's moccasins. Well, that could be you. And understanding that could be you, when you take the sympathy and that understanding or empathy that it could be you, you move to compassion, where you actually do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how I would relate those three terms.
Have you heard of emotional intelligence and emotional literacy? Daniel Goleman talks about feelings and emotions and what they're about, where they come from, and how they interlock and intermingle with each other. His point is that a person needs to be emotionally literate and have permission to experience those kinds of feelings that are occurring in him or her, so that they can do something if they're not satisfied with the feeling that they're having at the time. Because without emotions, we'd be robots, we'd be nothing.
Yeah.
But this is where that came from, and okay, let's leave that.
Okay.
Memberships in political, social, and civic organizations. Any memberships worth mentioning? You mentioned a few things as I saw the lapel, and there you want to say something about what we talked about on your lapel?
Sure. Well, obviously this is a symbol of the United States Marine Corps, which I spent my little time in. This is law enforcement. My career was in law enforcement.
How long were you in law enforcement?
23 years, 8 months, and 13 days. Not that I was counting.
Oh my God!
And it was a good career. I enjoyed it very much. I retired relatively young, which has been allowing me to do so many more other things that I really wanted to do. But I enjoyed my career. And then the last one is Rotary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently a member of Rotary. I also belong to an American Legion post and a VFW post.
Mm-hmm.
I have been in other service clubs in the communities that I've lived in, from Kiwanis to Lions to Eagles, the dominant service clubs of the communities that I've lived in, where you can make a contribution to your community.
Mm-hmm. And what did you do for 23 years in the Marine Corps?
Not in the Marine Corps, in law enforcement.
In law enforcement, rather, yeah.
I was a probation officer.
Uh-huh.
Worked with adults and juveniles, both in confinement settings to a large degree. Ran a high school education program as the law enforcement liaison in an adult facility for about 4.5 years, which was very rewarding. It's why I ended up getting a teaching credential before I retired, because I found that I enjoyed that. And then I also ran a long-distance running program in a juvenile facility for 5 years. I would take as many as 30 gang members out on 5-mile runs in the mountains, and then every month we would take 8 of them down to the city and take them on a 10K run in the city. Never lost one. Never lost a kid.
I bet you have some interesting stories through the years of all that time you spent working with kids.
Yeah, there's some good stories. But, you know, that time's passed. I let that go.
Uh-huh.
It's too easy to go, you know, I coulda, woulda, shoulda, and you know, that. And I'm not very good at that. I prefer to look at where I am and where I'd like to go and what I'd like to do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The past will take care of itself.
So how long are you going to be in politics before you retire from that?
As long as the public will have me, and I'm doing something that I'm interesting and that I feel is interesting and productive and will contribute to making the community I live in better,
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably stick with it. I enjoy it.
And you should. And you'll be good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
We need more people like you. From my sense of you forget I'm a clinical psychologist, you know. So I got my hat on kind of cocked a little bit about what you're
We
about.
watch out for you guys.
I deserve that.
Yeah.
So since I'm running out of things to talk to you about, let's just take a break a little early, and then we'll get into the subject that we're talking about, your candidacy.
Okay.
Can we take a break, Mr. Director?
So that's good. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you for hanging in there as we got through the first half of the show. And for your viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like my guest here, Ken, and about who he is so far, and about his candidacy and his adventure in politics. And we'll hear some more about what he's really about in Clackamas. And shall we start?
Okay.
And there's a couple of things you said to me that provoked my thinking about what's important to talk about. You want to start off by talking on your own about what it is you're planning to do, or shall we go through these things that you suggested in your email?
I'll let you go ahead, and then if there's something I need to fill in with or something, I'll be happy to.
You want to be focused on rebuilding a good working relationship with our cities, fellow counties, and Metro. What's Metro?
Metro,
Because this is seen all over the country,
okay.
you know.
Metro is the local overarching planning agency for what's known as the Metro region, which is Clackamas County, Multnomah County, and Washington County.
And that's all in Oregon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they, our relationship with that organization right now is not the best. So I don't believe we can solve the problems that we do have that we'd like to address in Clackamas County without rebuilding that relationship and having a positive working relationship with those Metro councilors. They are elected as our county commissioners. They have a portfolio of responsibilities, as do county commissioners. There are intersections between those two agencies where there can be conflict. And if you point across the table at the guy on the other side and you demonize that person, it's pretty difficult to get them to sit down at the table with you and work out a solution to whatever that conflict may be.
And you're dealing with all kinds of personalities, huh?
Absolutely. So I believe in building positive working relationships with people, not demonizing them, understanding that their perspective is not necessarily wrong, it's simply different. When you phrase it that way and you deal with it that way, you have a pretty good chance of solving the problems, and that, of course, is what you're elected to do on behalf of your constituents. Demonizing the person on the other side of the table simply leads to stalemate, like we're seeing in Washington, D.C. right now, and that's counterproductive. So I want to rebuild those relationships so that Clackamas County can benefit from its relationship with Metro Agency and with the Metro concept in general. So that's probably the overarching important issue. Along with that, we need to have a good, strong working relationship with the cities that are in our jurisdiction. The mayors, the city councils, the CPOs, which are community-based organizations that provide input to the county from our more rural communities. You have to have a positive working relationship with them. And to ignore them, to not listen to their advice when they give it to you, is counterproductive. It doesn't mean you're going to do everything that they tell you to do, but when most of them are on the same page on a particular issue, it would behoove you to pay close attention to what their position is, because they are closer to the voter than the average county commissioner is going to be, simply by the nature of the size of their jurisdiction versus the size of Clackamas County. So building those relationships becomes critical. And when you want to deal with Metro, or you want to deal with the state legislature on an issue that's important to Clackamas County, having a united front with the Clackamas County Commission and our cities, it makes it much easier to make what you want to have happen at the legislative level, or even with Metro. And if they're with you on an issue, it's even more powerful. You don't get that cooperation at the legislative level if you're fighting amongst yourselves.
So there's too much fighting among themselves.
Or simply, sometimes there's fighting, sometimes there's just disrespect, sometimes it's just ignoring what the needs of the cities might be, or what the charter of Metro might be, and you can't do that. You have to understand that every one of those people has an elected responsibility that they're trying to do to the best of their ability, and to ignore that is counterproductive. So the overarching issue, I think, is to build those relationships. Then you can get into the more pragmatic problems. How do we get the roads paved? What do we do about our infrastructure? What do we do about our educational system? I mean, we can go on and on and on with the issues that we all know need to be addressed, but they won't get addressed until we deal with the relationships.
What would you bring to the table in your capacity as commissioner to take care of those problems you just mentioned and ticked off? What would you bring?
About 50 years of boardsmanship experience, in which, working as part of teams of board members, we have been able to accomplish many things. I'll give you some examples.
Sure.
When I served on a school board for 12 and a half years, we started with textbooks in 1981 that were written in 1954.
Oh, man.
We had to retext the entire district. We had to computerize the district because there wasn't a single computer in the entire district. We had to build 2 new schools. We had to revamp the entire transportation system of the school district because all the kids came to school on buses because it was a huge rural area. So they weren't driven to school by their parents. We hadn't had a Native American graduate from our our high school in over 20 years when I first got on that board. Okay? But by working together, by even developing a relationship with the reservation that was in our school district, we were able to get the Native American students back into the school, and within 3 years of the 12 years I was on that board, we graduated our first Native American student in over 20 years.
And part of that was because of how you were and how you behaved.
As part of a team.
As part of a team, yeah.
I try to make that very clear, because it's very easy for a politician to say "I" all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to avoid. But the fact is that there is no I in this process. It's we. You do work together, and you put aside some of your own biases to solve certain kinds of problems. And and by having good relationships, you can ask the person on the other side of the table to do the same.
Will you talk to the presidential candidates running for the presidency nowadays? I think some of the things you're saying would be useful.
If they want to listen to me.
I hope they would.
Yeah.
Professionals like you.
But that's just, that is one example. I served on a planning group for 15 years. I chaired that group. We did 5 community plans over the course of that 15 years. Master plans for the community. And we were able to protect the agricultural lands in our community, which was a critically important part of our community. And I happen to think it's a very important part of Clackamas County. We built a museum from scratch. We never had one. We built a fire department from scratch because we never had one. All of these things happened because we worked together. And people put aside some of their individual differences of opinion on political issues and decided that this was the important thing that needed to get done, and we worked together.
And you were on the board.
And I was on the board. Currently, Clackamas River Water Board. As I may have mentioned earlier, I was appointed to serve on that board along with 2 other gentlemen to straighten out some problems they had on the board. 2 of us are Democrats, 1 was a Republican. Didn't make any difference. The fact is, we were able to turn that district around. A very specific problem that occurred along the way was we formed an agreement with a neighboring water district to save some money. It was called, they call it a 190 agreement, okay? And it basically allows you to combine some resources and save money for the ratepayers. And Oregon City had a problem with what we did. And so they filed a lawsuit against us in the land use courts. So we asked staff to see if they could resolve it, and they were unable to do so. But instead of going to court, I went to the mayor, and I asked the mayor if he would be willing to sit down and see, with all the players at the table, and see if we could solve the problem ourselves. He was okay with that. We convened a meeting within a couple of weeks at City Hall in Oregon City. We had 2 meetings, and we had the problem solved, and we had an intergovernmental agreement between all of the 5 agencies involved. Think about that, 5 agencies.
Oh, man.
But we managed to get an agreement in 2 meetings. Cost about $10,000 to put that in legal, and we saved all these agencies a combined amount of about $500,000 in taxpayer and ratepayer money by sitting down, working together, and solving the problem, and not demonizing one another. And to me, that is the critical component sometimes missing in politics, is recognizing that we have to do this together, and you can't do it when you demonize the person on the other side of the table.
What do you do with somebody on the other side of the table who seems to be determined to not like you?
They don't have to like me. They don't have to like me. It's nice when people like you. Okay, and obviously you hope when you're running for public office that enough like you that they will vote you in. That's certainly part of it. But they don't have to like you. You don't have to, after this interview, we don't have to go out and have a drink together. Okay? What we do have to do is do this interview in a civilized manner. And I need to say what I need to say, and you need to ask the questions you need to ask. Whether we like each other or not is not relevant. It's nice, but it's not important. It's not critical, as long as you are focused on the objective, which is solving the problem that you're elected to solve.
And being aware you may have another objective that you're not aware of, or you may be aware of, and you're pursuing that as you're ostensibly pursuing the objective at hand, the one you're...
Well, it goes beyond that. So you and I are sitting on a board, and I need your assistance on a particular issue. And you're not real enamored with that issue, but you go along, okay? 2 weeks later, another issue comes up that's really important to you. If I've demonized you, or you've demonized me, how do we work together on the next issue? You can't do it. So what you have to be able to do is not make it personal. You have to say, you try to look at the merits of the issue and address the merits of the issue to the best of your ability, compromise where necessary, and move forward, because the next thing that comes along, you may need some help over there.
What if somebody's demonizing you or attempting to? What do you do to head that off or stop it? Because that's what needs to happen in those kinds of situations, to have the results that you have been describing.
You have to have a thick skin, to be honest with you. I mean, politics is like, football or boxing. You're going to take hits. It goes with the territory. But again, just because that person's demonizing me today, if I overreact to that, there may be never a chance to get back to a positive relationship with that person. So I do my best to not overreact to it. And there are those times when you have to grit your teeth or bite your tongue and just keep your mouth shut. And I'll be the first to admit that. But there may be another issue that comes down the pike later on, and if we haven't completely poisoned the relationship, then there's still an opportunity to reach out and solve the problem.
What caused you to decide to run for this position at this time in your life?
Well, after our success on Clackamas River Water Board, and then I saw some of the kind of negative behaviors on the Clackamas County Commission, I decided that maybe I could bring something to the table that would help stop some of that and move our county forward in a positive direction.
Okay.
So I said, and you can complain, you can ignore, or you can throw your hat in the ring. I threw my hat in the ring.
We have a comment here, resolve the Stafford remand. What is that?
When the planning was done for the region, the Stafford area was not done to the satisfaction of the courts.
Stafford area, that's in Oregon and Clackamas County?
It's a roughly a triangular area bounded by Tualatin and West Lynn and Lake Oswego.
These are districts in the
those are three cities.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's an unincorporated area, and it's mostly rural and some farming and that sort of thing in that area. So it's a kind of a rural enclave, kind of surrounded by more urbanized areas. When the plan was done, it wasn't done to the satisfaction of the courts, and so that portion of the plan was sent back. Excuse me. That portion of the plan was sent back for the Clackamas County Commission and Metro to resolve. To date, it has not been resolved, and it needs to be done, and instead of being ignored. And the community there has put forward some ideas that they believe are workable. That it remains to be seen exactly what's workable, because I'm not on the inside of the negotiations at this stage.
Sure.
But I think they put forward a plan that has a lot of merit, and I've indicated my support for it. Once I am elected to office, I expect to be working with the chair and the other members to get that resolved as soon as possible. Because once that's done, the next issue, which is really the very important issue, is the urban reserve issue can get resolved. Until that's resolved, our business community is not entirely aware of what the rules are going to be and where they're going to be applied. And business can adjust when they know what the rules are, but they're not going to invest or adjust until they know what the rules are. And I don't blame them, because they need a certain amount of certainty, because they're risking their money and their capital and their energy. So you have to make sure that you've got a set of rules in place that they can depend upon. So once, to me, that's one of the high priority projects that we will be working on. Hopefully, we'll get that done quickly. I believe the gentleman who's running for the chair currently, Mr. Bernard, has some ideas on how that can be resolved fairly quickly, and hopefully it will be.
Interesting. Land use, especially below the Willamette River.
That's been a major issue in recent times, and it's being, the Stafford remand issue actually has been used to hold has been held hostage to the land below the Willamette River.
What do you mean below the Willamette River?
South of Wilsonville.
Uh-huh.
Okay, there's a golf course there called Langdon Farms and some farmland there, and the owners would like to have the designation of that land changed, which would allow it to be developed. But unfortunately for them, it is exclusive farm use land. And it's to go back, the golf course itself is to go back to exclusive farm use land if it ever stops being a golf course. We only have about 13% of our land left in this county that is farmland. And we are the #1 producer of organic food in the entire state of Oregon. I don't want to see us lose any more of our farmland to development. At least, certainly, not at this time. I don't think it's necessary.
What kind of development? Residential or business or what?
They were talking, they've talked a variety of things. They've talked about putting a casino there, warehouses there, industry there. There's been umpteen different plans, what they would like to do with that land. But they knew when they bought the land what the rules were. And I don't think it's appropriate for them to try to get special permission from the county to have the land use changed just for them. So I have taken a very strong position in support of keeping that land as exclusive farm use land. If you go to my website, one of the things you will see there is a couple of essays that I've written on the subject, and I've made it very clear where I stand. Unlike most candidates, I actually put where I stand in writing.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is they even tried to expand that into land east of Canby and land near Estacada. Mm-hmm. And the communities came out in force in all three of those communities at community meetings that were called by the county, and almost to a person were absolutely opposed to any change in the land use designation.
Well, where is the resistance coming from?
From the landowners themselves, who want to essentially develop the land.
Do you have an organization, Chamber of Commerce, or what?
None that I'm aware of. But let me kind of phrase it this way. I've said this to the public on a number of occasions, and I will share this with you. If you buy the right piece of land at the right price, at the right place, at the right time, and with the right zoning, you can make a lot of money. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely legal.
Sure.
Okay? Yeah, if you happen to buy the wrong piece at the wrong place, at the wrong time, for the wrong price, and for the wrong zoning, you may lose money, and it is not the job of local government to bail you out. And that's what they want. And I don't support it.
Well, you're talking about welfare for business rather than the citizenry?
No, we have enough land for light industrial development here in Clackamas County as we speak. There's about 1,600 acres available, and we have a number of mayors in our county who've shown a great deal of interest in having that happen in their communities, and I think we should partner up with them to see what we can do and help them get businesses located in the lands in their cities that are available for light industry. That's the way we ought to be working.
That sounds really interesting to me. I'm aware of the time. We've still got about 12 minutes. I want to be sure we cover
Okay.
Anything more. I can go down the list here, or if you want to tell me what you want to talk about next. Or shall I go to the next one?
You can go with the list you have. That's
okay.
fine.
Ms. Smith's vote against a safe place. What is that about?
Okay. My opponent voted against a program called A Safe Place. It was brought to us by the sheriff of our county. And essentially what the program is a centralized location where a woman who has to get out of her house with her children because she's being abused can go to this location. All of the social services that are necessary are available in that single location. There's a deputy there to make sure that the area remains secure and safe for her. You can even get court services by video, so if she needs to get a restraining order, she can do so.
Does that exist now?
It exists now. It was voted 4-1, and she voted against it, and I was appalled that she voted against that. Having worked in law enforcement and having seen the consequences of abuse in families, I thought, how could anyone possibly vote against something like that?
Why did she say she voted against it?
My understanding, and I don't know this to be absolutely true, but my understanding is that it was financial, and my only response to that is that the other four can read a budget also. So I don't think that's a valid answer, quite frankly. That program needs to be expanded. It's already helped about 4,000 women in the 4 years it's been in existence, and the need is great. So that is something we need to continue.
Yeah.
Another issue that just recently, there's what's known as a sheriff's levy on our property taxes in some areas of our county that provides additional law enforcement services in the county. That levy is coming up for renewal. The sheriff came to the county commission and asked the county commission to send out a postcard in support of continuing the levy. Mm-hmm. She voted against it. As someone who worked in law enforcement, quite frankly, I disagree with her vehemently on that. We've lost 20 deputies since 1996. We had 120 on the streets in 96. We have 100 on the streets today, approximately. We don't need any more cuts. If we lose that levy, we would probably lose deputies, and we would have to cut jail cells, and that would mean releasing prisoners that we're not necessarily prepared to release back into the community. And we currently have 27 jail cell beds that we are unable to staff. So we need to be looking at how we staff the ones that we have rather than cuts. So I don't think that that's being responsible with respect to the law enforcement needs of our community.
Yes.
There's a number of issues that I could go into.
Adequate funding for sheriff to increase patrol deputies. You need to increase patrol deputies?
We have 3 deputies on in the entire county from 3 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening, or 6 o'clock in the morning, excuse me.
3?
3. If it wasn't for the cooperation from the city police departments that are in our various areas of the county, responses would be pretty difficult. And they still are pretty difficult.
Boy, you got to have law enforcement.
Of course you do. And the community, they're paying taxes. They expect to have those services.
Of course.
So I would like to see if we can do something about improving the night patrols in the county.
That's going to take money.
Of course. Anything that we do takes money. None of it comes for free, and we have to prioritize the funds that we get from the taxpayer. Mm-hmm. I do know that one of the top priorities of a county government is public safety, and the sheriff is the lead in public safety in our county.
So, what do you say to those people who say, "I don't want to see taxes raised because I don't want to pay any money from my income or my wealth in order to protect those people and let them take care of themselves"?
Well, if there's enough people who say that, then they won't elect me.
Good answer.
It's really that simple. But I think most people would disagree with that sentiment, quite frankly. And I'm willing to pay a reasonable amount of taxes to have law enforcement protection.
And yet, for a lot of issues like the ones you're talking about right now, they're not going to have social justice as a primary thing that we're looking for. And because of money and interest and other reasons, it seems kind of frustrating, because it seems like those kinds of things you're talking about right now should have been taken care of in the past 10 or 20 years.
Well, it's an interesting conundrum, I think you would call it.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
In that enforcement can never be the solution to all of the problems. You simply don't have enough resources, nor can you lock up enough people to guarantee security, nor is that necessarily the best way to go in any event anyhow. And of course, social services are expensive. But the sheriff made a good point when he brought that program to town called A Safe Place, because it was the sheriff that brought that to us, okay? And sheriffs are not known for their, hypersensitivity to social problems.
Yes.
Okay? They have a very specific task. But he is smart enough to recognize something, that social program allows him to break a chain of events that continually occur. If he has to send a deputy back to the same house 15 times, that's a pretty poor use of his deputy's time. And if he can get that woman and her children out of that dangerous situation and into a safe place and break that cycle, Now he doesn't have to send a deputy back to that place anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? From a financial point of view alone, that saves money. It allows him to be more efficient with his deputy. And it has the added benefit of having a social justice benefit for all of us. So I look at something like that and I say, we have to find a balance in how we do that, and we only have a limited amount of resources, but when and where we can do those kinds of things, that's the kind of thing we should do. It applies to our veterans on the streets that need help. If we can get people off the streets and into housing and get the counseling that they need and then get them established and into jobs, we don't have to deal with them on the streets doing things that we don't want them to do, which is doing drugs or whatever it is. And it's whether it's veterans or any other person that finds themselves in that kind of a situation.
What I'm going to say right now, I don't think it's listed on what we're talking about. What comes to mind with what you just said was the spring water corridor and the homeless population there.
Yeah.
And that's a true dilemma.
It is.
Do you have any thoughts about that? Say what that's about, the spring water corridor and homelessness there. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's basically, I'd call it, for lack of a better word, a homeless encampment.
Yes.
And as we well know, because of the economic downturn that we faced and the change in our economy that we're still addressing, there's a lot of people that have found themselves in pretty bad straits. Homelessness is a very difficult problem to solve. Some of it is people who are working at very low wage jobs but can't afford rent. Some of it is people who don't even have that and they just have no place to go, but they would like to get back into the workforce. And some of it is people with drug and alcohol problems, PTSD, and then some of it is people who just want to sponge off the system.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So you have this whole spectrum of people that you have to deal with. They're all in the same place, but they're not all the same kind of people.
Yes.
So it's going to take a multifaceted approach. I have a few ideas, and I believe in stealing ideas, and I know there's at least one good idea in Utah being done right now. The Mormon Church is partnered with the state government and dramatically reduced, if not eliminated, homelessness in their state. So public-private partnerships may be a way to go. It doesn't have to be a church. It can be a church.
Sure.
Maybe with some of our veterans, it could be a partnership with the VFW and the American Legion and the local government. There's a variety of avenues that we could look at. We could take schools that are closed, that are no longer being used. Maybe those could be used for temporary housing. That's another thing we could look at. There are options that we can look at to reduce the problem. But it's not going to be just a law enforcement problem. It's going to be a combination of social services, people from the private community, as well as government, all working together, and law enforcement.
And money.
And money. There's no question about it.
I'm aware of time running out for us pretty fast here, and I think I want you to talk to the viewers about whatever else comes to mind with your candidacy or anything else you've talked about before, because I want to allow enough time for you to express spontaneously what it is you want the viewers to know. And look at, that's your camera there. Look at that one.
Okay.
Talk. Yeah. There, the light's on for you.
All right, well, thank you. As you already know, my name is Ken Humberston, running for Clackamas County Commissioner, position number 4, and my opponent is Tootie Smith. I believe what I bring to the table is many years of experience on planning groups, school boards, fire boards, museum boards, economic development commissions, and my personal experience both in the Marine Corps, in law enforcement, as a firefighter and a school teacher, and even in private enterprise. I bring a point of view that is broad spectrum in its approach. I believe in recognizing that the person on the other side of the table is not to be demonized, but to negotiated with. And I hope that you will take a look at my website and read more about where I stand on things. I have put what I believe in writing on a number of issues, unlike most candidates, and I hope that you'll give me a serious look in November. And thank you.
Very good. Now, what do you think about the presidential race
No comment. That is a no-win.
Someone said that there are not really two political parties anymore. There's two wings of the same party, and that's a party of the moneyed interests. And some are called Democrats and some are called Republicans. And I'm confessing now that I'm a Joe Stein supporter. I used to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, but I was wondering if you had a comment, and I could appreciate that you don't, because you don't want to have somebody vote for you or against you based on what you're supporting at that level.
Yeah. My focus is on Clackamas County. That's where I want to put my energy. As I've made it clear on the campaign trail, I don't even have any intention of running for any other higher office. This is the job I want. It's the job I want to be focused on and put my energy into. And I want people to judge me on the basis of what I've done in the past and what they believe I'm capable of doing in the future, and leave it at that.
Okay. So it looks like we're running out of time, things to talk about, so it's time for us to wind down and talk about some public service announcements. And boy, I'm sure glad you came aboard.
Well, Don, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
It was a great conversation.
Uh-huh. And to get my show local broadcast schedule, go to my website, www.donbaham.com, and click on Present Day Activities. To watch my shows on the web, Google Don Baham YouTube, and there's hundreds of shows on through the years. And to learn more about the American Civil Liberties Union, because go to www.aclu.org. Without the American Civil Liberties Union, our civil liberties would be further down the tube than they are. It's really scary. That's fundamental. To get Dr. Don's shows broadcast by other stations, ask your local public access station to go to www.pegmedia.org and ask them to get my shows to be broadcast from that local thing. Oh, we got end corporate personhood and show that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. Go to Move to Amend and learn more about ending corporate personhood. So thanks for watching, and remember KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you too. You too. Thanks again for coming.
Oh,
I really enjoyed you.
I enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, it was good. See what's going to happen. Keep me posted. Will do, and I'll be watching.